Good morning, everyone. Have you seen the price of meat in Winnipeg? Paul Mitchell, he says average Canadian families are being priced out $44 per kilogram for a rib roast. Here's $71 at North Mart. This is in Winnipeg, Friday. Western beef, $74, $79 for 2.06 kilograms and 2.208 kilograms. 79 for the 2.208. 74 for the 2.06. Yeah, that seems expensive. There's more as well. Ribeye, $22. It seems expensive. Is that more expensive than normal? Have the prices meaningfully ticked up? I've been watching the prices. There are some things that are about the same. Boxes of cereal about the same. Haven't changed too much. Bread, right? You can buy that pretty easily. Meat looks to be increasing though. Red meat, specifically chicken. Pork is still what it was in January, but so. I don't know. I don't buy a lot of rib roasts, but that seems more expensive than the last time I bought a rib roast. Justin Trudeau. Now, yesterday, President Trump was in and out of the hospital, he was out of the hospital yesterday, and the media made a lot of hay out of this, but revelations about Justin Trudeau's own testing came out in the process, and here we go. CTV update. This is 12 hours ago. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has revealed more details regarding his COVID-19 test after coming down with what he described as a throat tickle. A throat tickle. I'm not going to play anything he's talking about here. There's a minute of him talking about it, but he's misremembering the dates. Justin Trudeau said he was tested for COVID-19 in September when he had a throat tickle. I got tested, it was negative, and I went back to work a few days later when the doctor told me I was cleared to do it. And here is Rachel Aguilo, who says, we'll update our story accordingly to note that the Prime Minister has apparently lost track of time because his test was not in September as he stated. Once we can post to our website again. So apparently there was an issue. I think this is CTV. There was a big power outage yesterday with CTV and everything from Winnipeg West was down, and Toronto was having issues with their broadcast as well. Anyway, here's update on that information. The Prime Minister consulted his doctor on August 27th because he felt a sore throat coming on. He was tested that day and isolated and worked remotely until receiving a negative result the next day. Public health guidelines were followed according to the PMO. So he went and got tested on August 22nd, and we heard nothing about it. And fine, whatever, privacy and all that, right? But Donald Trump goes to the hospital for the weekend, and that's like unending CNN news cycles, right? Here's Ginny Balfour, and she says, interesting time. He had to get tested, cabinet meeting and national caucus meeting. When did he isolate? That day or the day after the test? So people went back and looked at his schedule during that time period, right? And said, well, when? It seems kind of contrived. Why release this information on the same weekend Trump comes out of the hospital just fine, right? Like it seems calculated. It doesn't seem like a reporter found out about it and was like, or somebody idly was like, hey, have you ever been tested, Mr. Prime Minister? And he was like, actually, yes. Like, just now, we're gonna go with this story, right? To eclipse. It probably has to do with Google prioritizing Canadian news and keyword injection, right? Testing, COVID, Trump tests positive, whatever. I'm speculating here, but why now? Why now? Just why now? Like, answer. Why now? I don't understand. I do understand. Miss Walsh, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said, she's tweeting, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau reveals that he was tested for COVID-19 in September after he had a tickle in his throat, blah, blah, blah. Sorry, this was a repeat. I just collect the news as the day goes on. Here is dog-eating Minister McKenna, and she says conservatives seem to think a 25-year-old documentary that ran on Discovery's channel for years is a gotcha moment. So here it is. Watch for yourself. Then back to this century so we can keep helping people through COVID-19 and build back better. She bribed her way into a cockfight, watched a bride get sold, and then ate the bull or the cow that was used to purchase the bride, and was in cockfights, ate dog. Right, all of those things happen. And if Pierre Poilievre had done the same thing, do you think that he'd be sharing the documentary on Twitter and calling his haters out? No. And I think that that's notable. That's funny. That's interesting to me, right? Like Catherine McKenna can do these things. These things that would be not possible for a conservative politician to live down. And she shares the documentary and says, yeah, I learned a lot. She says, on that trip, I learned firsthand how fortunate we are to live in Canada. If you can manage it, please donate to support the global COVID-19 response effort. This is me in blackface in Indonesia. It's cultural there. It's fine. It's fine. Justin did it a bunch of times, right? If liberals do it, it's fine. If a conservative does it, or anybody who just disagrees slightly with the liberal edict at this point in time, not fine at all. You'll get people threatening you for well, it's just like with Trump, right? Like there were 24/7 news about how sick he was. He's on his deathbed. He looks terrible. He's going to die, a whole thing, right? Everybody was talking about that on CNN, on the left mainstream media. And then Trump comes out to prove that he's fine. Like he does a little drive-by and waves at some supporters. And the media then flips it and says he's putting people at risk. Masks don't work? No, masks don't work. Of course not. Anyway, if you're a conservative, you can't do it. It's not allowed. You're putting people at risk. But if you are a liberal person, this is a learning experience for all. Donate to this cause because I said so, because I've got firsthand experience. Such hypocrites. Such hypocrites. Seriously. Like it's just, what else can you do but laugh? Like it's so funny, right? Like the banana republic we live in. Hilarious, right? Yes, I have the moral high ground here, conservatives. And she believes it. Right? Dog-eating Minister McKenna. Okay, moving on. Well, my friend sent me this. Why is the government putting tear gas, riot control agent and food support quarantine facilities out to tender? I wonder what's coming that we need these things. I agree. And, I kind of take these things with a grain of salt. Rocco Galati also says federal mandatory camps. And I clicked on the link. Yeah, federal mandatory camps for tender. So this is buyandsell.gc.ca. Link is in the description if you want to read it. And, well, here it is. It says request for information regarding service providers for federal quarantine isolation sites for the government of Canada. And there's a whole objective and purpose, background. The timeline is what I thought was interesting. RFI process September to October 2020. Release December 2020. Evaluations February to March 2021. Contract award March 31st, 2021. We're building these facilities for 2021. And we've already got a list. There's a list here of facilities. I can't highlight this. I can't highlight this PDF for some strange reason. But they have a list of current facilities. Where is it? Here, hold on. Here's the list of current facilities, Annex B. I thought it was further up in the report. So it's got Calgary, Vancouver, Kelowna, Winnipeg, Regina, Toronto, Montreal, Halifax, Fredericton, St. John, Whitehorse. So there's a bunch of these facilities already. They're looking at housing, I guess in each location about 1,600 people. That seems like a lot. It could be nothing, but it is notable, right? Why do they need these facilities? Who goes to these facilities? Is it travelers who need processing time or isolation time? Why not? Why is the home isolation not possible? How much does this cost? Where is the money coming from? There's a lot of questions. Maybe it's not a terribly insidious, evil plan by the Canadian government. Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. Who knows? But it seems like I've got more questions than answers here. I know what they want to do. I don't know why, and I don't know what's currently being done is not sufficient for 2021, right? Because it seems like the death rate is reducing, not increasing. The second wave is cases, nothing else. No hospitalizations or ICU, and they've scrubbed the data to hide it. So they're trying to hide it, right? So it seems notable to note these moves they're making despite the second wave not delivering the deaths or hospitalizations or ICU visits that maybe would necessitate the public be necessary for the public to believe the second wave is here and real and scary. So very interesting. Moving on, wouldn't a climate emergency be obvious? Wouldn't systemic racism be obvious? Wouldn't a global pandemic be obvious? I mean, if it wasn't for our politicians and the mainstream media shoving this down our throats 24/7, none of us would give these made-up issues a second thought. The BS is obvious. Yeah, and imagine if there was no masks, like if masking wasn't mandatory, people would be ignoring the rest of the orders as well. And the sick rates, the people getting sick would be about the same, I think. I have no indication, no evidence to indicate that masking helps at all. at all. Here's Justin Trudeau. He says, newspapers play a critical role in protecting our democracy and keeping us informed. And with this pandemic, we need credible and reliable information more than ever. So this National Newspaper Week, we're especially grateful for newspapers and the people behind them. Thank you. I think they're using this to manufacture consent to crack down on Rebel and people like me, opinion pieces, True North, all of those news things. I think they're going to try. They can't do it directly. They can't take out those news places directly. I think they're going to try and crack down on the internet. They're going to say you need a license. You need to meet these standards in order to discuss news. If not, you have to pay this much for a link. Whatever. They've got some plot cooked up, and they're using this to manufacture consent. And it's not just me that thinks that. Here's Viva Frey, and he says, the amount of people on Justin Trudeau's Twitter feed calling for overt government media censorship is frightening and should not be ignored. Here's Justin Trudeau's link that I just read. And the responses to it, a bunch of them say, hey, Justin, many Canadians are worried about post-media net, an American media conglomerate taking over Canadian media, TV, and newspapers. Could you please tell Canadians what is being done to ensure Canadians are getting unbiased information in relation to Canadian politics? I would like Canada to consider tightening regulations on free speech like Germany has. Hate, misinformation, and outright lies published as truths should not be allowed by citizens and by the news agencies. The current hacks must be shut down and or curtailed. And there's more, and I think that they're going to point to this and say, look, the public wants us to crack down on that hate speech, that evil free speech that too many people enjoy these days in Canada. I'm being sarcastic, of course, but I think that that's what the end game is. I think that that's what they want to do. All right, moving on. Green leadership race. And the Green leader has been selected. She's running in Toronto South. And Elizabeth May says, after Jagmeet Singh won his seat, NDP MPs thanked me for standing down in Burnaby. They said it was not clear at all that Jagmeet Singh could have been elected without our help. We think the NDP should reciprocate at this historic moment. And here she is talking about Toronto Centre.
Him this morning, but apparently I take it that he's already said the NDP will not stand down at Toronto Centre. I hadn't had the opportunity to ask him yet because, as we know, Annamie Paul became leader on Saturday, and now we're in a situation of leader's courtesy. When I communicated with Jagmeet Singh...
Leader's courtesy? Leader's courtesy? Is that a thing? Where's the leader's courtesy in the other one, Bernier's riding? Where's the leader's courtesy there? You guys gonna step down so Mr. Bernier can get into the House of Commons? Leader's courtesy. Here's Ryan Grieve. He says, the idea of a leader's courtesy is nonsensical. Politics is competitive, and the purpose of a political party is to win elections. A new leader should run where they have a chance to win. Elizabeth May has a safe seat, so why will she not step aside for the new leader? And I think that's accurate. Here's Jagmeet Singh being a jerk. Have you guys seen the guy skateboarding down the expressway in Los Angeles on TikTok? I saw that video, and then I saw the Fleetwood Mac guy doing the video, and then I saw the original video, and now a bunch of people are doing the video because now it's gone viral. I think after the Fleetwood Mac guy did it, that should pretty much end the trend, right? Like, Fleetwood Mac was the guy who wrote the original song that the whole thing was done to. And this isn't even right. He doesn't have the right drink. It's the camera angle's the wrong way. Like, if you're gonna parody or pay homage to a viral video, like, do it right. What are you doing? Okay, NDP affiliate. Yes, right in the end. Yes, it's right in the NDP constitution. Organization is working to put hardworking Albertan businesses out of business. Business owners out of business. And Friends of Science says CUPE Manitoba says they are the NDP. Is this true everywhere? Here's the backgrounder. It says it seems just about every news article, opinion piece, and editorial about the leadership race would touch on CUPE. And surprisingly, some of these articles went so far as to suggest that there was something sinister about our involvement in the NDP. What these critics fail to realize is that we don't support the NDP. We are the NDP. The NDP was created as a joint project by the Canadian Labour Congress and the Canadian Commonwealth Federation, CCF. And I don't know if these guys go by CLC. Anyway, back to this. To say that we are a supporter of the NDP is insufficient. We were a founding partner of the NDP. So that's talking about CUPE. And I tagged Greg in this. I said, can you dig on this? Like, You should dig on this. This is interesting. And he said Canada's NDP is based in Fabian socialism and has had a close relationship with unions going back a long way. And he digged for me, and that's wonderful. Thank you, Greg. I appreciate it. And I'm not going to go through this now, but it's interesting reading. Basically, they use the unions to bolster their membership in key ridings and key areas to kickstart their party, I suppose. Very interesting. Very interesting. I didn't know. I knew that they were a party that was born out of workers. I didn't realize workers meant the unions directly. And the amount of power that unions have is just incredible. Incredible in Canada. Incredible. Way too much. Especially teachers' unions. Wow, way too much. Way too much. Here's Calgary Herald. This is an opinion piece. It says, city numbers show runaway economic and personal crisis in small business. Since the start of the pandemic, 67% of business owners say they've experienced job or income loss. Among other Calgarians, the figure is 37%. That's a massive, massive percentage. Now, it says job or income loss. It doesn't say like if you've lost half your income, right? Like that's a less big hit, but it's still a big hit. It's not ideal, and certainly not what most people were expecting out of 2020, I don't think. Here's another one. North Atlantic oil refinery and come by chance to close permanently. This is in Newfoundland, I believe. But it says sources say deal with Irving Oil has collapsed and workers were notified on Monday. No good. That's jobs. And when the economy is hemorrhaging the way it is, I've said this before, you can't replace the economy with government printed money. Like at some point, like I remember vividly seeing the bills on eBay for Zimbabwe, like $100 million bill. I was going to get some and then it lost its sheen. Moving into Thanksgiving, CP24 is reporting, limit Thanksgiving dinner to only those people you live with, Toronto's top doctor says. And Greg Cox says, why? Our kids are at school with 25 to 30 kids in each class, not always wearing masks with basically random kids 6 hours a day. If we know what our neighbors outside family are doing and where they're going, I feel safer with them than the kids in my daughter's classes. Yeah, and there's so many other reasons to discount these people's advice. It's just ridiculous. Here is Belinda Carriolis, and she's an independent MPP in Queen's Park, Doug Ford's Queen's Park, and she's reading a statement on the floor of Queen's Park. And, here she is. I'll let her speak for herself. She's talking about how the government balked at having a fine for fraud for political parties for $5,000, but has no problems giving up to a $10,000 fine for people who are gathering for Thanksgiving. How dare you, Grid Eyes?
This government believes political parties get to run themselves and make up their own rules and laws, but the citizens of our province, from the north to the southwest, to the east, rural and urban, all 14.5 million of them, should be subject to a $10,000 fine if they have people over for Thanksgiving and by some mistake an 11th person shows up. Clearly, and I'm being sarcastic here, clearly the people of Ontario do not know how to govern themselves, so they need to be subject to a $10,000 fine by a government that believes they're above a law that would be against them committing fraud and offered up half the fine. It's clear that there's one law for the people and another law set for government.
And it's clear that that is not appropriate. And you got to wonder why they don't want the political parties subject to a fine of potentially $5,000, and they don't want that. And they're just fine with the public being fined up to $10,000 for daring to have the audacity to gather for Thanksgiving. Right? Just awful, awful. Here's the second part of her speech. If you're interested, links in the description. Chris Selly is doing an opinion piece. It says Canada's public health communications meltdown here just in time for Thanksgiving. Why is Theresa Tam offering Thanksgiving advice? There's no advice on safe gatherings that's applicable across Ontario, let alone across the country. This article is kind of meandering. It reinforces it goes deep on a lot of the crazy stuff. It doesn't call out any of the inconsistencies with regards to the daily changing expectations and rules, the testing inconsistencies, the PCR cycle concerns. It doesn't call out any of that stuff. It doesn't call out the fact that there are some serious questions that the politicians are just ignoring. It kind of just plays into the rhetoric. Some places it questions things, and I'm going to highlight those parts, but the article wasn't nearly as good as the title made it seem. It says, if you're going to listen to a public health officer, make it your local one. By my count, 2.1 million Ontarians live in public health units that currently have fewer than 10 active COVID-19 cases. Assuming you keep it local, Thanksgiving is an entirely different proposition than there in Ottawa or in Toronto. And I scroll down again. The federal counterpart, Theresa Tam's advice on Thanksgiving seems relatively sensible, particularly in its discussion of safe outdoor gatherings. But why is she offering it? Why is she answering reporters' questions on hyper-local matters to begin with? Why are reporters asking her about it? There's no advice on family gatherings that's applicable across Ontario, let alone across the country. And then he talks about the Atlantic bubble. Tam's Twitter account has been increasingly bizarre of late as well, and she did that tweet that talked about bending it like Canadians and giving it the double by weighing personal risk assessment and prevention practices and reconfiguring and downsizing our in-person contact bubble as and where appropriate. And he says, the response was mostly absolute bafflement. What else could it be? A country full of very rule-abiding people is drowning in official rules and advice, often badly delivered, taken together, add up to zero. Yeah, the advice is bad. It undermines the credibility of all of the public health officials, especially when they ignore all of the death data, the ICU data, the hospitalization data, and just concentrate on the cases. It's not like we can't see this. It's not like we're not able to look at this. And they're ignoring it is similar to the response about masks. Their response about how the decrease in cases obviously proves that masks work. The correlation proves that masks work. And wait till we get to the Ontario article. It's crazy. Here's Atlantic Canada. 5 cases in the entire province of New Brunswick, and yet masks to be mandatory in New Brunswick liquor stores starting Thursday. Wait until they make it mandatory everywhere for everyone, regardless of whether you're inside, outside, or having sex. Here is Winston Smith. He says, this is from the presentation deck presented to City Council. They voted on the mask mandate based on this deck. This is what counts for as evidence in Ottawa. Apparently, Council was okay with this. None of these points are actual evidence. More to follow. They used the New York Times, which I've said before, like I've used as proof of this not being proof. The New York Times is not a scientific. They can't say, yes, that's scientifically accurate. Go ahead. No problems. Above board, the New York Times seal of approval. This has to do with health, the New York Times. Yes. Sure. Anyway, here's another graph. And there's this is the graph. This is called the X and the Y axis. And you need these numbers to make this meaningful. Okay, Ottawa City Council, do you understand? Anyway, this is supposed to represent a first wave followed by other waves, but it looks like a big squiggle and some smaller squiggles. And it has in no way represents what our current situation in Ontario looks like on the actual graphs. So this is pretty funny, except that it's terrifying that this is what policy is being based on. Have you heard of the Upper Grand District School Board? Yeah, even more terrifying what they base their policy on. National Post is reporting mandatory masks made a big impact on Ontario's COVID-19 trajectory, a study says. A team of economists from Simon Fraser University had these findings. That's how valuable these findings are. A team of economists assessing mask efficacy across the province of Ontario using bad modeling and projections and saying, oh, well, if we didn't have a mask, the model says it would have been 25% more. They control the model. I would love to see the pre-settings on this model. What's your model? Share the model. Open source the model, guys. Mark Toohey, I think that's how you say it, Towey. Kudos to Doug Ford in a passionate response to reporter questions. Ontario Premier Ford Nation says he wanted to see much more compelling evidence of need before he's willing to destroy people's lives by ordering restaurants and small businesses closed in another lockdown. I hope that's true. This is from 20 hours ago. I hope it's true. I haven't watched all of Doug Ford's questions and answers. If I could find this answer, I will play it. I hope it's true. I hope that there's enough pushback and people saying what I'm saying, that the evidence is not cases alone does not make this a dangerous thing. And until the other numbers, if the other numbers catch up, until they catch up, we don't need to start locking down. And even if they do start to catch up, we need to assess that. Is that actually COVID deaths, or is that the Toronto Public Health attributing a car accident victim to COVID, right? And that's the first question. Because how reliable are the stats and how reliable are the tests? From what I've heard, not. Very, very much not. And there was just a new study released as well talking about that, and I scrubbed it from the report today. I'll put the link in the description, but it's on the Ontario Public Health, and it's talking about the high PCR cycles and the concerns with false positives with a PCR cycle above 20-25. It confirms that. I thought that I was mainly beating a dead horse on that one, so I just left it out. But I think it's valid to bring it up and mention it. So anyway, I should have left it in. Regardless. National Post is reporting Ontario's new COVID models show everyone should stop panicking, especially Doug Ford. It says, the daily case count is always the number that makes headlines in this pandemic. It means a lot less than one might think. Daily numbers that are about as high as last spring's peak suggest that we're right back to where we started, but we're not. Testing volume is now 4 times as great as it was back then. More tests equal more cases. More important is the percentage of tests that yields a positive result. In the spring, it was 7.5%. Now it's 1.5%. If Ontario had the testing capacity in the spring that it has now, the first wave of numbers would have easily dwarfed those we're seeing this week. And I think that that's the most important part, right? I scroll down. It's no wonder people don't know what to think. This is the second article talking about how confusing the rules are and how people just don't know what to think, what to do, right? Because the rules are so conflicting. Back to this. The biggest fear in the next few months ought to be an overreaction that further restricts personal freedoms and economic activity without the facts to justify it. The government's actions so far are appropriate to the scale of the problem. I disagree. But when Ford warns of impending doom, it undermines that message and it creates fear in people who need confidence to work, shop, and send their kids to school. Yeah, I don't think the always telling people doom is 2 weeks away. And remember the beginning of September, everybody was saying, oh my goodness, September, the kids are going back to school, cases are going to explode, oh my goodness, right? Here we are in October. Cases aren't exploding. My kids' school's fine. Most kids' schools are fine. There's a couple of cases here and there in Guelph and other places, but we're not seeing the explosions that were predicted. And so this article is talking about how Doug Ford needs to calm down. The models aren't so bad. And here's the Liberal leader Del Duca in Ontario. He says he urges Premier Doug Ford to close indoor restaurants, bars, and gyms for 28 days to curb COVID-19. If you are afraid and a public worker, so whose paycheck is guaranteed, or maybe you work online or something to that effect, are you clamoring for this lockdown? Is that what you want? The Liberal leader's looking, that's the base that he's trying to talk to. That's the base that Biden's talking to. He wants to lock everything down until we're safe. I think my standard response to that is you can't. It's not possible. You cannot make everyone safe. I mean, you could be sitting in your garage and a plane could crash into your garage. Crazier things have happened, right? You could go across the street, not see a car, squashed, right? Like crazier things have happened. The world is not a safe place inherently. You can't promise safety to everyone. It is not responsible. And you shouldn't promise to destroy people's businesses based on the promise of safety. You can't keep people safe. You can't keep people insulated from COVID-19, oh no, or any other respiratory or illness like that, right? And especially you can't say now for the rest of time, because of the fear and potential threat of this virus, we're just going to live in a perpetual state of lockdown. That is not acceptable. Canadians, Western people are not going to accept that. And I hope, anyway, I hope people stand up and say no. It's time to stand up and say no. Here's a woman, and she explains her family's history, and she says, my father fled China and the communists in China after they took everything from him and built a life in Canada, and I can't believe that I have to fight the communists in Canada now. I didn't think that in my lifetime that I'd have to fight the communists in Canada. And yeah, there's a lot about that story I can relate with. I didn't think that I'd be needing to speak up about how confusing the government is purposely being. A storytelling job? Come on. Here is inconvenience for your safety, right? Like this sink is closed for your safety. To comply with social distancing guidelines, your safety. Please be inconvenienced for your safety. Here's police checkpoints to start Friday in Quebec to limit travel as COVID-19 cases surge. Cases mean nothing at all. But they're using this to fundamentally change the expectations Canadians have of being able to move freely in Canada, of being able to even share their opinion, right? How dare you share QAnon conspiracy theories that are about solar things and the spreading of pandemics? I don't think the Q's even talked about that. I really don't think any drops talked about that at all. Anyway, people they're using this COVID-19 to get people pliable to accept things like this, right? Checkpoints to leave Quebec, right? Checkpoints. In and out of Quebec, all sorts of other places too. Here's Alex Pearson. We've been watching her as she's waited for her testing results for her kid. She says, day 8, still no results. I'm not worried that my child has COVID. I am worried about how messed up and chaotic testing is and what this means for the numbers we were told daily and don't reflect 90,000 tests stuck in backlog. Yeah, there's still a big backlog. And here's the last tab for this morning. CTV News is reporting, this is September 29th. Frontline healthcare workers keep the music going at Mississauga Hospital. If the frontline healthcare workers have enough time to go and play piano, then the hospital is not overwhelmed. Here's the opening paragraph. The sound of music can be heard once again in the atrium of Credit Valley Hospital in Mississauga after a lull due to COVID-19, thanks to frontline staff members who have stepped up to the piano. It used to be volunteers. Now it's paid staff members. Yay! I don't think that this is an improvement. If staff members can do it, you can't have a couple of volunteers in? No? This is difficult? This is not easy to reason through? If the COVID-19 is not going to get the staff member, is the COVID-19 going to get the volunteer? All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. There's a lot concerning going on in our country. There's a lot concerning going on in our media. There's so much, it's hard to even keep up. And I'm like, I keep up because it's fun. I find this interesting, and I appreciate that you watch what I find interesting. But there is no possible way that you can keep a pulse on all of the changes and the things that they're trying to do from the federal, provincial, and even municipal governments, right? Like they've blocked a street calling it what is it? Mixed use street, I guess. And this is all over Guelph. There's like 4 or 5 places. And this is right across from a park. I don't think it's responsible to teach kids that you should go play in the street. Because streets are for cars, and cars squish kids most of the time. I tell my son and my daughter, who wins, you or the car? They both know the car wins every time. You get out of the way. That's the point, right? You don't go play on the street, you moron. Stay out of the street, right? And this push to say, oh, it's fine, everybody should be able to play on the street. No, man. Cars have people in them. People are flawed. So anyway, they're using taxpayer money to make you more inconvenienced, and they're selling it. They're packaging it up as like, oh, it's better for you. It's not better. Anybody reasoning this through just a little tiny bit, these little policy changes, these little pushes, municipal, provincial, federal, they add up to a worse standard of living. And I don't think that's good. And I can't believe that the people who we've elected to at all levels are so devoid of being able to see this. They can't see this. They're so close to it. They can't see this. They can't see that what they're doing is obviously stupid. You live in Canada. You want to have people eat outside in tents, but you don't want them inside? How stupid are you? Like, this is nothing more than an attack on businesses. It is very, very concerning at every single level. So I don't know what the fix is. I'm just saying that I see this and I don't know how you can even begin to take it apart, one little piece of this. I addressed critical race theory. I did everything that I was supposed to do. I articulated it nicely. I articulated it in a way that was professional and in a way that they should have responded to, and all they did was shut me down. And then they shut down the committee that I sat on, blamed COVID, and then basically reneged on having parents give input into the equity plan because I said directly that I wanted to give input on the equity plan. Even when you address this stuff in the way that you're supposed to address this stuff, unless you have a lawyer and a lot of money, they're going to do whatever they want. So how do you fix this? You vote them out. You get involved. Okay, sure, that's gonna work, right? Sorry if I'm a little bit demoralized on the whole thing, but yeah, tried that too. Totally worked. So here we are, and we're in a situation that's very, very messy, and they want to make it more messy. And how do you fix it? I wish I knew. Well, I guess that's where I'm going to end today. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out SpeakingMoistly.co. Check out CanadaReport.co. And have a wonderful, wonderful